We can start now. I hope everyone can hear my voice. So it's exactly the time now, so let's start. First of all, thank you for joining our webinar today, and it's my pleasure to be to present you the 17025 clause 5 for structural requirements. I hope everyone will be in a safe and a good health during this time. Let's introduce myself till the other colleagues join us. My name is Mohamed Saad. I'm working as a senior accreditation expert in the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO. I have around 25 years experience in the field of accreditation. I am a member of the ILAC committee for accreditation issues committee. I am also a member of the work group for medical laboratories and the work group in ILAC for proficiency testing. I worked in several accreditation bodies. I worked with SWEDAC, the Swedish accreditation body, with the Emirates International Accreditation Center, which was the Dubai Accreditation Center. I also worked with the Iraqi Accreditation Center and the Egyptian Accreditation Center. So I'll start now with you part of the standard. It's a series of training sessions related to the 25, the new version 2017. So this session today, it's just concentrating in the clause 5, which is for structural requirements. As you know, the new version of the 17025, it's established in the year 2017, and it is till now the final date for transfer. It will be by end of this year. So if your laboratory is still implementing the other version, the old version of the 17025, it's time to change. And if you are now implementing the new standard, it is good to be here to understand exactly what is clause 5. Clause 5 in the previous version of 17025, it was the technical requirements, which is now there is no more management and technical requirements. All the international standards related to the conformity assessments become harmonized with this structure. So clause 5 now, it's for structural requirements, which was included previously in the clause 4.1 for the organization and management, but now it become special one for the structural requirements. Now let's start to compare the old version of the 17025 and the new version, which is related to clause 5. We have 5 major changes. First, one we will see now in the subclause 5.6. There is no more quality manager position required. However, you can use any position, any term, but the term which was used in the 2005 version, the quality manager, is not mentioned now. And the same also for the position technical manager, technical management. There is no more having this position. The term technical manager is not there anymore. So now you can have any person with any position which is having the functions related to the technical manager and the technical, the quality manager position, it's the same. So this is the first two major changes. The third, which is also very important change, that it's not required now to have the deputies of the key positions. You remember in 4.1.5 in the previous version, it was required to have deputies for each key position. That means you need to have a deputy for the quality manager, for the technical manager, for the lab manager, or however the composition of your laboratory. Now it is not required by the standard to have this. We have a new sub-clause which was not there in the 2005 version. Now, each lab is required to define the range of the lab activities. If you are a testing lab, you need to define exactly what is your activities, what are your testing activities. If you are a calibration lab, what are the calibration procedures, what are the ranges you are working for, and we will go for the details of that later. Also, the last change is related to the communication process. We added a part related to the communication, which is taken from the ISO 9000 version, the new version for the 2015 standard. It is related to the communication process regarding the effectiveness of the management system, which is almost covered in the management review. Let's go for the details of each sub-clause of the structure requirements. We have 7 sub-clauses, and we will go for each of them, and I'm looking for to give you explanation of this and how you can implement this sub-clause in your laboratory. Let's start now with clause 5.1. In 5.1, your laboratory need to be a legal entity or part of a legal entity that's legally responsible for its activities. That means, which this was before in the same part of the previous version, but let's give explanation. What is the meaning of legal entity? You need your laboratory. If you are a private laboratory, you need to have a legal entity, and let's take care of this wording, legally responsible for its activities. That means in your legal entity, there is a need to have statements for that you are authorized to operate as a testing laboratory or as a calibration laboratory to do the calibration activities or the testing activities. I'm asking about this because I have some assessments for laboratories, and in their legal entity, it is written that the lab is authorized to do calibration of instruments, while I am assessing this lab as a testing laboratory, and this is against this part of the standard. You need to be sure that your legal entity activities is related to your laboratory activities. It's the same. So this is the first part here, 5.1. Also, there is a note in this part of the standard that how we can get the legal entity if you are a governmental laboratory. If you are a public laboratory, you don't have a special legal entity. You cannot get to the authority to ask for a legal entity. And then the standard is given a solution that if you are a part of a government laboratory, then your entity as part of the government is enough. But of course, you need to have something, some order, some management decision from the government that part of this entity, of this organization, the part of the organizational structure, there is a laboratory. So it is also there is no need for having a special legal entity for the government. So this is 5.1. 5.2, it's talking about identifying the manager's overall responsibility for the lab activities. This is exactly the same as the technical manager responsibility or technical management responsibility. Now there is no more wording technical management or technical manager, but we have now identification of the management. Who will be the manager who have the overall responsibility of the testing activities of the lab? We need to identify that the lab activities, the operation activities, the testing activities or calibration activities, it is the responsibility of the lab director or the laboratory manager or the technical manager or however. So you need, in this part of the clause, your laboratory is required to identify who is the one from the management who will have the overall responsibility. So this is the second subclause related to the structure requirements. Let's go to the third one. Third one, we are talking now about new issue. Define and document the range of lab activities. We have two issues here. We need to define and we need to document the range of the lab activities. What are the lab activities? And what is the range of that? If you are a testing laboratory working in the area of microbiology, so you need to identify that the lab range of activities, it's for microbiological testing of food and water. And if you are doing many tests, you can also add what type of tests, E. coli, salmonella, however. So you need to identify the activities, you need to document to be part of your documentation system. And this document, it is the range of the lab activities. If you are a calibration laboratory, so you need also to identify what exactly the parameter you are calibrating. For example, you are working for mass calibration and you are doing this, this range of the mass with this CMCs. So you need to identify this. As you know, if your laboratory is accredited from any of the accreditation bodies, so you have an annex to your accreditation certificate, which is the scope of accreditation. This scope of accreditation, it's exactly what is required here, defining the range of activities. Let's take care about the exclusion of this. If you are subcontracting, but now in the new version, we are not using this word anymore. If you are providing externally your activities, you need to be sure that, and this subcontracting is ongoing basis. For example, if you are microbiological laboratories, but you accept the food samples and you are subcontracting to other laboratory for chemical testing. So you are only having the microbiological testing, other laboratory is testing the chemical part. You cannot have in your document or your range of lab activities that you are having the chemical testing, because this is subcontracted activity on an ongoing basis. But of course, for some reasons, the lab can subcontract one of the testing activities, but not permanent. For example, if you have a problem in your laboratory, in your machine, in your equipment, and you will subcontract for 1 week, 2 weeks, your testing activities to other laboratory, in this case, it is considered as part of your lab activities. So to have a conclusion for this part, here we need to define and have a document for the range of lab activities which is done in your laboratory, not subcontracted. And you need to have details for what exactly your testing parameters or calibration parameters. And now let's go for clause 5.4. It is the same as the previous standard, and it is about having your activities in permanent or temporary facilities. You need to identify, is your laboratory permanent or you have site laboratory? For example, you know, in the construction laboratories, there are some site laboratories just for the period of the project, and there is no more. Also, there is some temporary or on-site calibration laboratories or track laboratories. You need to identify exactly what is your laboratory type. Is it permanent? Is it temporary? Is it on-site laboratory? And you need to identify what are the requirements you are following in your laboratory. You will carry the activities according to the requirements of the following: the standard ISO 17025, the customers of the lab, if they have a specific requirements, your customer can also have some specific requirements for sampling, for transportation, for reporting. You need to identify that. Also, the regulatory authorities. If the government or the regulatory authority in your country having some specific conditions, specific requirements related to the environment, to the infrastructure, to the reporting, you need to meet these requirements. The last one which your laboratory need to comply with is the organizations provide recognition, which means the accreditation body. For example, if you are going to be accredited, you need to be sure that you are following all the requirements of the accreditation body. You know, for accreditation, you have the 17025, and on the other hand, you have a special requirements for the accreditation. For example, for proficiency testing, in the proficiency testing part, and the standard 1725, it is just written as general statement. This is part of the monitoring of the quality assurance of your lab activities. But each of the accreditation bodies giving exactly what you need to comply. You need to have, for example, in each test, you need to have a proficiency testing and the frequency. In each year, you need to participate. And for example, it could be accredited PT provider. This is requirement given by the accreditation body as part of that. So this is the fourth subclause for the structure requirements. Let's have again a look for that. You need to have a legal entity, and this legal entity, you need to be sure that your activities is part of the legal entity. You need to identify the management which have the overall responsibility of your lab activities. You need to define and document the range of your lab activities, and you need to carry out your activities in a permanent, temporary, or on-site laboratory to meet the requirements of the standard, of the customers, of the regulatory bodies, and the accreditation bodies. So these are the first four subclauses in the structure requirements. Let's go now for number 5.5. Have a look for this. We have three subclauses here. First one, number A, define organization and management structure of the lab. Here you need to define you to have the organizational structure, to have the management structure, and it need to be documented. What is the structure of your laboratory? And let's have a look to the other one and define its place in any parent organization. It is very important part. Is your laboratory standalone laboratory, have a special legal entity, or it is part of larger organization? If you are working in an organization providing other activities, you need to have, in this case, if your laboratory is part of parent organization, you need to have two organization structure. One is for details of your laboratory, giving the structure from the lab manager, the quality manager, the technicians, the lab analysts, or however your structure, and the link to the parent organization. And you need to define your place. Is your laboratory reporting to whom? To the operation manager of, if you are, for example, you are a laboratory in a company, oil production company, and having this laboratory as part of the structure, then you need to have the organization structure of the whole company and the position, the place of your laboratory in that organization. Why? To be sure, the relationship, which is the next point, the relationships between management, technical, and operations and support your organization and management structure. To whom the quality manager, or however named, to whom reporting, to whom the lab manager is reporting, to whom the quality assurance officer is reporting. What is the relationship between the human resources and department and the laboratory? Is there a relationship, or it's a special department? If you are working in an industrial laboratory, who is the one taking the decision? Is he the lab manager or the production manager who's looking for the production, not for the quality? So this type of relationships need to be identified here. And the next one, we need to identify and specify the responsibility and authority for all persons who manage high work affecting the lab activities. We need to make clear specifications. Who's the responsible for the any work affecting the lab results? For example, who's responsible for uncertainty measurement calculations, for the reporting, for the validation of the test method or calibration method, for the internal audit, for the corrective actions, preventive actions? So we need to identify clearly the responsibility, authority, and the relationships for all persons who manage, perform, or verify. So the supervisors, the one who's performing, the one who's verifying. We need to clarify who are these three persons if we have three persons for this lab activities. And the last one, C in clause 5.5, we need to document the procedures for activities and validity of the results. You know, the new standard now, to have a quality manual is not mandatory, is not a requirement now. If it was clearly indicated in the previous version that you need to have a quality manual, and it make reference to all documentation of the laboratory. But now, you need to to identify and document the activities of the laboratory. It is not required to have that in a quality manual. It could be group of procedures, work instructions, SOPs, however, but you need to have a documentation for all lab activities which are affecting the validity of the results. So this was clause 5.5. Now let's go to the clause 5.6, which is, if you CDE. This is exactly the quality manager, or however named, the quality responsibility, quality management responsibility. Now, the standard is giving that your laboratory shall have personnel who have the authority, resources, and to carry out the following, which is implementation, and let's take it easily. If you are implementing, there is a deviation, non-conformities. So the second is identifying the deviations, which is the non-conformities could be, or complaints, or however, and then initiations of the actions, which could be corrective or preventive action. And then after that, you need to report all of this to the management. You need to report about the performance of your management system. And the fifth is, you know, the cycle plan to act. So now we need to ensure the effectiveness of laboratory activities, the review, the internal audit, the management review, all of these activities to ensure the effectiveness of laboratory activities. So we have 5 main responsibilities for the quality manager: implementing and then when implementing, we have the gaps, which is the non-conformities. And number 3 is taking actions, which is corrective or preventive action. Number 4 is reporting to the lab management on the performance. And number 5, ensuring the effectiveness of the laboratory activities. So this is clause 5.6 related to the quality manager activities. Now let's go close here. In this subclause, we are going to have a lab management ensuring the communication. And here we are talking about special communication. Communication takes place regarding effectiveness of the management system and the importance of the meeting requirements. So here we need to have a communication system. Communication system could be meetings, email system, could be there is a board which given all orders or requests. There it could be by several meetings. So this, we need to ensure that there is a communication channels in the lab, there is a communication system, and we need to be sure the effectiveness of the management system is done through this communication. And this is done as part of the effectiveness of the management system is one of the management review outputs. So you need to have that as part of the management review also, which is important clause. We will talk about that in another session for completing the standard. The other part of this sub-clause is integrity of the management system. The lab management shall ensure that integrity of the management when changes to the management system planned and implemented. And this is actually very important part. Let's have an example for that, which make it easy for everyone to understand. If you are having ASTM standard, you are implementing as a test method in your laboratory, and this standard, it was the version 2014. And you need to be sure that you are updating your test method regularly and for the regular updates of the test methods. So you found a new version 2020 for this STM method. Now, what you need to do? We need to change the testing method from the 2014 version, for example, to 2020 version. And this, we need to be ensured that integrity is maintained. Means when we make the change to be trained about the new test method, you cannot start just implementing the new test method without having a comparison between the old one and the new one. What are the differences? And the people need to be qualified, trained about this new test method. And is there a need to revise the forms, the worksheets, the test report? Yes, if the answer is yes. And you need to communicate all the changes to your lab staff. So this is what's meaning here of the integrity of the management system is maintained. We need to have a communication system. We need to ensure that integrity is maintained when there is a change to the management system. So this is the subclause 5.7 related to communication and integrity in case. This is generally the major parts in this subclause. Before we finalize this session, I'd like to thank Inspeed Global company for having this opportunity to give this free webinar to the laboratories. And this is part of their system to ensure that a laboratory is improving, and they are, Inspeed Global, they are providing proficiency testing to laboratories way, and they are accredited to 1743. So it is a good chance for everyone to have a look to their websites and their services. And I'd like to confirm that we will have other sessions also to have the other parts of the 1725, the new version. Please, if you have any question regarding this subclause or any part of the standard, you can communicate through the this phone calls or the emails. I will be happy to answer all of your questions. Thank you very much for your attendance, for your participation, and looking forward to have your feedback to your questions, and I'll answer all of your questions anytime. And have a nice day or a nice evening. Thank you and see you.